We had some discussion with Jason Lee this morning from the Ethnic Communities Council discussing his concerns over using the word republic in the long title, and I've noticed that in your suggested change you have also dropped the reference to the republic. I'm wondering if you can talk to me about that. I'm surprised that that wouldn't be something that you would view as having a lot of public resonance about what this referendum is about. So if you could comment on that, would be good. The other thing is, I've noticed that you also use the Australia's head of state rather than president, and I wondered if there was any particular objection to using the president. And the last thing, it also deals with his question of the nominations. Wouldn't you get around the difficulties of putting in the nomination process, even though people might say it's going to be ignored or could be ignored, if you actually required the Prime Minister to, you know, perhaps had, I think one of the other members of the committee suggested having some sort of minimum number of people that had to be on the shortlist, so that the committee couldn't just suggest one, but that there actually be a requirement that the Prime Minister select from that shortlist. And that goes a little bit beyond my other issues with the long title, but I just wondered if you could comment on that as well.
I think on dealing with your points in turn, but in reverse order, I think the last point to make is again a fair one. It's one that was certainly considered at the Constitutional Convention, but again it was felt that it was inconceivable that you would get a situation where there was nobody on the committee shortlist that didn't have favour with either the Prime Minister or the Leader of the Opposition, bearing in mind...
Even though that list won't be public?
Well, yes, that's right, because the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister are in effect represented on the committee. I mean, it's very hard to imagine a committee of that kind, if it's preparing a short list of 4 or 5 people, whatever the number is, refusing to agree to somebody supported by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. Again, there's an element of unreality there. So it was certainly again in the interests of minimal change and this sort of responsible government tradition approach, I think it's fair to leave it as it is. Dealing with the reference to the word republic, we don't have a particular problem with that, except that I think it's very important that people understand what we're talking about. You know, you cannot. Well, we now know, as you know, there's been extensive research done by the government on the which this committee should get access to if you do not have access to it already. I think that's very important. Extensive research done on the level of public awareness and knowledge on these constitutional issues, not on whether people are Republicans or monarchists or whatever. And it's very troubling the number of people that really do not understand the nature of the model at all, that think it involves widespread political change, think that it involves a president like the American president and so forth. So we felt it was important, if you just use the word republic, of course, to those in the know, that means the bipartisan model that's been recommended by the convention. But we believe that given that the long title ought to be, in this case, a fair description of the nature of the model, without being too long, because if it becomes too long, it becomes as long as the bill itself. We felt that it was important to refer to the replacement of the Queen, because that, after all, is the central point, and by an Australian citizen, by an Australian citizen called the President, if you like, to replace the Queen as Australia's head of state, who would have the same powers as the Governor-General. I mean, you can, the difficulty is that the longer you get, the more problem you're going to have with people saying, well, it's just going on and on and on, and it becomes not a long title, but an extremely long title. So we're not running away from the term republic. What we're concerned about is explaining what the proposition, summarising as neatly as you can, or at least summarising it enough so that people understand what it is they're voting on.
Michael, I've heard more